The wind had teeth that night, gnawing at the log seams of her cabin like a starving thing. Clara wrapped another shawl around her shoulders, the fire a faint crackle behind her, barely holding back the creeping cold. She'd gone out to bring in firewood when she saw it. A speck of movement by the tree line, a lump that didn't belong to the landscape. Snow swirled around it, and she nearly missed it again as she approached. It was a fawn, no mother nearby. Barely breathing. She crouched beside it, her breath ghosting into the frozen air, heart caught between pity and logic. It wouldn't survive the night, not in this cold, not alone. Clara had lost much since her husband died 2 winters ago. The world had grown quiet and narrow. But something about the tiny tremble in the animal's chest cracked open a corner of her resolve. Gently, she lifted the fawn, so light, bones and breath and wet lashes, and carried it into the cabin. The moment the heat touched its body, it whimpered like a child. She laid it on an old quilt by the hearth, spooned a little milk into a tin bowl, and whispered nonsense like she used to do when her baby had fevers long ago. Time passed in firelight and shadows. The fawn stirred, its legs twitching against the fabric, but it lived. That was all that mattered. Outside, the snow thickened like silence laid heavy. Clara didn't know what possessed her to save it. She only knew the house didn't feel quite so empty anymore. At midnight, the wind shifted. Not the direction, but the feeling of it, like it had bent its back to carry something. Then, 3 deliberate knocks on the door. Not wild, not urgent. Calm. Knowing. She froze, hand still over the tiny heartbeat beside her. No one ever came this far up the ridge in winter. Not unless they meant to. Heart in her throat, she opened the door just a crack. And there he stood, a tall Lakota elder wrapped in deerskin and snow, his eyes ancient and unreadable. He didn't look at her. He looked past her, to the fawn warming by the fire. And then, in a voice low as earth itself, he said, "That is no ordinary creature. You've invited something sacred into your home." Clara stared, the cold forgotten, her world rearranging with each word. Outside, the snow kept falling, but inside everything had changed. Clara held the door half open, blinking against the storm and the stranger's eyes. He didn't shiver. He didn't ask to come in. Snow melted slowly on his shoulders, as if even winter dared not press too close. The fawn behind her gave a weak bleat, and the man's gaze softened. Not in pity, but in recognition, like seeing an old friend returned in an unfamiliar body. "Why did you bring it in?" he asked. Clara hesitated. "It was dying," she said. "I couldn't leave it there." He nodded, as if her answer matched something he already knew. Then, with no further word, he stepped back into the dark and was gone. She stood stunned, staring into the night, but the man had vanished as if the snow had folded around him and swallowed him whole. She bolted the door and turned to the fawn, which now slept soundly by the fire. That night, she didn't sleep. The elder's words circled her thoughts like smoke. You've invited something sacred. She'd never been superstitious. Her husband hadn't believed in signs or omens either, just work and sweat and a little whiskey to dull the ache of loss. But there had been something ancient in the man's voice, something older than the ridge she lived on, older than the timber holding up her roof. The next morning she found tracks outside her door. Hoofprints and bare human footprints, side by side, coming from the woods and ending at her porch. No sign of departure. She swallowed hard and went about feeding the fawn warm milk mixed with a touch of honey. Its eyes followed her now, deeper than animal instinct, watching with an eerie calm. That afternoon, she spotted a shadow on the ridge above her homestead. A figure stood still among the trees, long braids draped over his shoulders, hands folded in front. It was the elder again, but this time he wasn't alone. A girl, no older than 10, stepped out beside him, also barefoot in the snow, holding a carved stick in both hands. They didn't wave. They didn't come closer. Just watched. Clara stepped outside, heart pounding. "Do you need something?" she called up the slope. No answer. Then the girl raised the carved stick and pointed it toward the fawn visible through the cabin window. The elder lowered his head. A gust of wind rose from behind them, scattering snow down the ridge, and when Clara blinked, they were gone again. But the stick lay in the snow near her door, freshly placed. Its handle was carved with a spiral that looked just like the birthmark on her late husband's neck. Her breath hitched. She hadn't told anyone about that mark. No one could have known. Clara brought the carved stick inside with trembling hands, brushing snow from its surface, her eyes fixed on the spiral etched into the handle. It wasn't just a swirl, it was exact. The same curling shape her husband had carried just below his collarbone. She'd traced it 100 times in silence, in sorrow, after he passed. Now here it was again, carved by a girl who said nothing and vanished into snow. She sat by the fire, the fawn at her feet, breathing slow and even now. Its coat had dried and fluffed, warm and alert. When she touched its flank, the spiral seemed to pulse in her palm, as if some silent current passed between them. That night she didn't light the lanterns. She let the fire burn low and sat still, listening. The wind had softened, but the air still buzzed with something ancient. Not danger, not comfort. Something sacred. At midnight, the door creaked open, not from wind, but from a hand. She hadn't heard footsteps. She should have been afraid. But the fear never came. The Lakota elder stepped into the shadows of the room without a sound, and with him came the girl. They said nothing at first. The girl walked straight to the fawn, knelt beside it, and placed a small bundle wrapped in hide on the rug. Clara didn't interrupt. The elder stood across from her and finally spoke. "The spirit you took in was once part of your husband's vow," he said. "A promise never fulfilled." Clara blinked. "What do you mean?" He nodded at the girl. "He saved a child once, a child of our blood, during a fire that took many lives. He carried her through smoke and ash and left her with us, saying nothing. We owed him a life for the one he gave." Clara's heart thundered. "But he never told me." The elder looked at her with a sadness carved by time. "Because he never believed in debts repaid, but our people do. So the life he gave returned." Clara stared at the fawn, suddenly unsure if it was an animal at all. The elder continued. "He said once, 'If I fall, let my kindness walk on, even if I don't.'" He took the spiral-carved stick from her hands and set it beside the bundle. "The 5 horses come tomorrow. That's the price we pay for what he gave us. The necklace is hers now. And your name, your spirit, it is known." The fire flickered low, and the girl looked up at Clara with the same eyes her husband once had when he asked her to marry him. Quiet, patient, and full of something that couldn't be explained. Clara sat in stillness, no longer doubting. Whatever this was, had always been coming. The hide bundle sat beside the fawn like an offering, radiating weight far beyond its size. Clara reached for it slowly, her fingers trembling. The elder gave a slight nod, granting silent permission. She untied the leather cord and peeled back the layers of softened deer hide. Inside lay a necklace, turquoise stones threaded between bone beads, a single eagle feather hanging from the center. But what made her breath catch was the silver pendant sewn into the clasp, engraved with the same spiral that marked the stick, and her husband's skin. Her thumb brushed over it, and she felt heat rise from the metal, as if it remembered. The Lakota elder stepped forward. "This was given by our seer to the girl your husband saved. She wore it always. When she died last winter, she asked for it to be passed to the one who would shelter the dear spirit in its final form." Clara looked from the necklace to the fawn. "You're saying the fawn is her?" The elder's expression remained unreadable. "What returns does not always return as it left. Some spirits need softness before they become human again." The fire snapped behind her as if in response. The girl beside the elder placed her hand gently on the fawn's head and whispered something Clara couldn't understand. The fawn stirred, its ears twitching, and its eyes locked with Clara's again. Deep, knowing, no longer animal alone. That's when the elder said something that shifted the floor beneath her heart. "Your husband came to us in a dream before his death. He asked one thing, that when the time came, the one who received the necklace would not be alone anymore." Clara swallowed hard. "He knew?" "He hoped," the elder replied. "Hoped you'd still be open to wonder. Hoped you'd still believe in what cannot be named." The girl handed Clara the necklace. It was warm in her hands, as if it had just been removed from a living person's neck. Outside, the wind had died completely. Snow fell silently, but the world felt wrapped in pause, as if holding its breath. The elder and the girl turned to leave. "Tomorrow, when the sun touches the gate, you'll see them," he said, "and then you must decide whether to let the spirit remain or walk into the shape it's meant to become." Clara opened her mouth to ask what that meant, but the door had already closed. She was alone again. Except for the fawn, and the necklace now pressed against her palm like a heartbeat she used to know. Clara didn't sleep that night. The fire burned low, but her mind blazed with memory and mystery. The necklace lay beside her on the table, glowing faintly in the amber light. The fawn had curled itself near her rocking chair, its breathing steady, its presence no longer wild but woven into the room like it had always belonged. When dawn crept in, golden and silent, Clara stepped outside, wrapped in her husband's old coat. Frost sparkled across the field, and the snow had softened in the early warmth. Then, as the sun reached the wooden gate at the edge of her pasture, she saw them. 5 horses, tethered neatly, waiting. They weren't wild, they were groomed, saddled, calm. One bore a red handprint across its flank, a sacred symbol she recognized from the story her husband had once told about a woman rescued from fire and given a second name. Each horse had something tucked into its saddlebag: herbs, cloth, smoked meat, and a small carved flute. Clara approached slowly, her breath catching in her throat. The horses didn't flinch. It was as if they knew her, as if they had come not to be claimed, but to acknowledge her. She ran a hand along the nearest one's neck, whispering thanks though she didn't fully understand what they meant. A voice stirred behind her. "He said you'd be frightened." Clara turned. The girl was there again, barefoot in the snow, no prints leading to her. She walked up and placed her small hand over Clara's, which still held the horse's mane. "But he also said you'd know when the time was right." Clara knelt down. "What is it I'm supposed to do?" The girl looked to the cabin. "You must choose. Let the spirit stay safe and small, or let it become what it was always meant to be." Clara followed her gaze. The fawn stood in the doorway now, not trembling, not weak. It looked older somehow, taller. Its coat shimmered in the morning sun, and something shimmered beneath it. Not fur, but a flicker of something. Human. Clara felt her heart ache in that beautiful, terrible way it had when she fell in love the first time. "Will it remember me?" she whispered. The girl nodded. "In every breath, in every step. But you must let it choose, too." Clara stood slowly, the necklace warm around her neck now, the horses calm, the girl already vanishing again into light. At the threshold of her home, the Fawn waited, eyes full of something more than memory, something like recognition. And then it stepped forward. The Fawn stepped into the snow with a grace that startled Clara. It didn't stumble or flinch. It moved with intent, as if the body it carried was temporary, borrowed. Clara's breath misted in the cold as she watched it walk slowly toward the gate, toward the 5 waiting horses, their breath rising like smoke signals into the golden morning. The sun lit the necklace at her throat, and for a moment the silver spiral seemed to spin faintly, not by motion but by memory. She followed, not calling, not rushing, just walking behind this creature that no longer felt like a creature. The Fawn paused near the red hand-printed horse, then turned back toward Clara. Their eyes met. For a moment, the world stilled. And then the change began. Not like in stories, not in flashes or flames, but slowly, as if a curtain was being drawn back on something always hidden. The Fawn's form shimmered, blurred, and rose. Legs lengthened, the soft coat giving way to skin, and from the shifting silhouette emerged a young woman, no older than 20, her long dark hair laced with strands of snow, her shoulders bare except for a shawl that hadn't been there a moment before. Her eyes were the same. That was what undid Clara's breath. The eyes. The same steady, open gaze that had watched her from the hearth and from the shadows of the cabin. The girl didn't speak at first. She just stood there in the snow, blinking at the light, her body trembling like a fawn's legs might after first standing. Clara moved closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Do you know who you are?" The girl nodded once. "I remember now. Pieces. Warmth. Firelight. And your hands. I remember your hands." Her voice was soft, but it carried like wind through pine. "My name is Anna," she added, as if it had just returned to her. Clara reached for her slowly, like she might vanish. But Anna stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Clara in an embrace that was somehow both familiar and new, like meeting someone you've already loved in dreams. Behind them, the horses didn't move, still guardians of this sacred exchange. When they parted, Clara touched Anna's cheek. "You're safe now," she said. Anna shook her head gently. "Not yet. There's more. I have to finish what your husband began." Clara stiffened. "What do you mean?" Anna looked to the hills, her eyes narrowed with purpose. "There's a reason I was sent back, and it's not just to live." Snow fell again, soft as ash, as Clara realized her quiet cabin life had just become the center of something far greater. The morning passed without speech. Anna moved through the cabin like someone returning to a long-forgotten home, brushing her fingers along the old rocking chair, pausing before the hearth, staring at the hooks where Clara once hung her husband's rifle and coat. Her steps were steady now, no trace of the animal that had lain curled by the fire only days ago. Clara watched, heart divided between awe and concern. "What did you mean? There's more to finish?" she asked gently as they shared tea by the fire. Anna stared into the flames. "Your husband made a promise before he died. Not just to your people, but to mine. He was one of the few who knew the land didn't just belong to us, it remembered us, and he knew something dangerous was coming to erase that memory." Clara frowned. "What kind of danger?" Anna didn't speak for a moment. Then she rose, opened the door, and stepped outside into the snow. Clara followed. The horses still waited patiently near the fence, unmoving, as if they too were bound by some vow. But what stopped her breath cold was what Anna pointed to. Lines in the snow, symbols carved not by hand or hoof, but melted in long arcs and curves that resembled a map. "They came last night," Anna said, "while we slept, marking what they want. They're moving west, burning the sacred groves and poisoning the water where our people made their offerings." Clara recognized one of the symbols. It had been carved into the spiral stick left at her door days ago. "What do they want from this place?" Anna's voice was low. "They want to break the last tether. This land holds memory, of blood, of promises, of prayers. If they destroy this ridge, the rest falls with it." Clara shook her head. "But why here?" Anna looked at her with a fierce softness. "Because of you, and because of him. Your husband's final act protected the last daughter of the Wind Lodge. Me, that protection still holds, as long as I remain close to what he touched, and that includes you." A heavy silence settled between them. Then Anna knelt in the snow, her fingers brushing the lines like reading a scripture. "There's someone we must find. A man who betrayed the last pact. He's near, and he won't let me live if he knows I've returned." Clara's blood ran cold. "Then we won't let him know. Not until we're ready." Anna looked up, a fire sparking behind her eyes. "Then you'll stand with me?" Clara nodded. "For him. For you. For what this place remembers." The map in the snow began to shimmer in the rising light. By midday, the sky had darkened, not with storm, but with that eerie stillness that comes before something heavy shifts. Clara and Anna packed light. Just food, the necklace, the carved stick, and one of the gentler mares. The map in the snow had led them north toward the old lumber trail that hadn't seen wagons in years. As they rode together through silent woods, Clara kept watching Anna, marveling at the way she moved, neither fully girl nor spirit, but something between, something both ancient and brand new. Anna seemed to hear things Clara couldn't, the way birds stopped singing in certain groves, the way trees leaned in odd directions, as if leaning away from something. "His name is Silas Grant," Anna said softly, breaking a long silence. "He was once a brother to the lodge, a man of both bloodlines, Lakota and settler. He was supposed to protect the sacred water at Broken Pass, but he sold it to a rail company instead." Clara's jaw tightened. "Your people trusted him." "We trusted his mother," Anna corrected. "She died before he could be taught the old ways, and he grew bitter, said we held him back from becoming something more." Clara shook her head. "He destroyed his own kin's memory for power. And now he wants to finish what he started. The last grove lies just beyond your ridge. If he takes that, the rest falls into forgetting." They reached a clearing then, a burned patch of land, blackened trunks like grave markers against the snow. Clara dismounted, heart breaking at the sight. Anna walked slowly into the middle of the ashes, knelt, and laid the carved stick in the soot. "This was once my mother's grove," she said. "She taught me to sing the water clean here." Clara placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we take it back." A sound snapped behind them. Hoofbeats, not theirs. A rider emerged from the far side of the clearing, draped in a long oilskin coat, his face shadowed by a wide-brim hat. But his voice rang out clear. "I figured you'd come eventually, little ghost." Anna stood tall, not flinching. "I'm no ghost, Silas. I'm memory, and memory doesn't forget betrayal." Silas dismounted, his boots crunching over frost. "Your father's blood runs in me, too. That gives me claim." Clara stepped forward, fire rising in her chest. He gave his life to protect her. What have you given, Silas? He smiled darkly. Just enough to burn down what never should have lasted. The grove behind them groaned in the wind, as if the land itself recognized his voice. Anna didn't move, but her eyes flashed like the fire that once saved her. The moment held its breath. Silas circled the edge of the grove, one hand resting on his belt, the other toying with a silver flask. Clara noticed the way he glanced at Anna. Not with fear, but calculation. He didn't believe in spirits, not really. He believed in ownership. Anna stayed still, the carved stick now clutched in her hands. This place was never yours, she said evenly. You don't get to inherit what you tried to erase. Silas chuckled, low and bitter. Erase? I was trying to make something last. Steel and rail, those last, not whispered stories and songs no one sings anymore. Clara stepped beside Anna. You sound like a man desperate to matter, but the ground remembers who walked gently and who scorched it. His smile cracked. Pretty words for a widow who lives off the edges of someone else's land. Then Anna knelt and placed the stick upright in the blackened soil. This land isn't dead, she said quietly. It's only waiting. As her palm pressed the spiral, the ground trembled, just slightly. A wind kicked up from nowhere, swirling ash and snow into the air. Silas took a step back. What is this trick? But it wasn't a trick. From the base of the stick, a thin stream of water emerged, steaming against the cold. It twisted along the scorched earth, curling through the ashes like a snake returning to its burrow. This was a water grove, Anna said, where prayers became rivers. Your fire never reached the roots. Silas drew a revolver, hand steady. Then maybe this time I'll dig deeper. He raised the gun. Clara didn't think. She moved. Not toward him, but toward Anna, covering her with her body. The shot cracked through the air, but it never landed. From the trees came a deafening roar. 5 horses charging, the same ones left at the gate. They barreled into the grove with the power of a stampede. Silas turned just in time to see the red hand-printed horse leap toward him. He fell back, his gun flying from his hand, trampled into the dirt. The wind howled as if in judgment. Anna rose slowly, lifting the stick, now glowing faintly along its carved lines. She stepped toward Silas where he lay in the snow, bruised, breath ragged. This grove forgives nothing, she said. But I am not the grove. She knelt beside him and pressed the spiral to his chest. Remember your mother's name. And then, like the water it had summoned, the light from the stick flowed into him. His eyes widened, and for the first time, he looked like a man who truly saw what he had broken. The light from the stick faded slowly, and when it did, Silas lay still. Not lifeless, but stunned. His eyes, once sharp with defiance, now brimmed with something that resembled grief. He clutched his chest, not from pain, but from recognition, like a long-forgotten song had returned to him in a single note. Anna stood over him, her breath steady, though her shoulders trembled faintly. You were never meant to burn it all, she said softly. You were meant to guard what the fire could not touch. Silas blinked, and a tear rolled down his temple into the ash. Clara stepped closer, heart thudding. She saw now what Anna had given him. Memory, not just of the past, but of purpose. The spiral wasn't a symbol of possession. It was a reminder. To return, to protect, to remember. Silas sat up slowly. I see her now, he whispered. My mother. She used to sing to the spring. I thought it was nonsense. He looked at Anna. I thought if I built something bigger, I wouldn't disappear. Anna knelt beside him. We all disappear, but not everything we love has to. Behind them, the grove pulsed. Tiny green shoots had begun to emerge through the blackened soil. The water trickled louder now, steady and clear, carving a line through the burned clearing. The horses stood quietly at the edge, watching. Clara helped Anna to her feet. "What happens now?" Anna turned to her, the necklace shining at her throat. "Now we finish what he started. Your husband gave more than kindness. He left a path, one that led me here, one that protected the memory of this place long enough for me to return." She looked down at the stick in her hand, its glow now faded to a quiet warmth. "But I can't stay. Not as I am." Clara's eyes filled. "Will I lose you again?" Anna smiled softly. "Numbers, you'll see me in the water that never stops running, in the horses that return each spring, in the laughter of a child who doesn't yet know why she loves the trees." Then she turned to Silas. "Your penance is to rebuild, not what was lost, but what can be remembered." Silas nodded slowly, humbled. As Anna stepped into the heart of the grove, the snow around her began to lift in a gentle swirl. Light shimmered through the trees, and Clara knew this was goodbye, and not. It was a beginning, shaped like an ending. When the wind settled, Anna was gone. But the grove stood taller. The water ran clearer. And in Clara's chest, a warmth spread, not from fire, but from knowing. Nothing sacred is ever truly lost. It only waits for someone to remember.